Good evening, guys. Thanks for coming back. This is the final episode review of the miniseries Chernobyl that I'm doing. I just finished watching the last episode. I have to tell you, this was a great miniseries, and this is probably my favorite episode out of the 5. I want to hear from you guys. What do you think of this episode? What do you think of this miniseries as a whole? Just tell me your thoughts and your opinions on it. And don't forget, click on that subscribe button, click on the bell notification to hear any more notifications from me for your future enjoyment. This episode just overall really opened my eyes in many ways, with especially how it begins. You get a kind of a look into what this city around Chernobyl looked like before the incident happened, and it makes it kind of eerie to know that something bad is going to occur in a few days and no one is aware of it, and all of this is going to be lost, and at the cost of so many lives that tried to prevent it, all because of people that covered up a lie in order to protect themselves. This episode I like because it kind of backtracks all the way back to the first episode. It's mostly set in a courtroom setting, and you have the main character presenting the evidence as to what happened and retracing everything step by step and kind of accusing who's at fault. And more or less, it's the system that the Soviet Union is under. That's what's at fault in the end. The way they lie about things in order to protect themselves. And you know, Jared Harris's character even gives kind of a speech in the courtroom talking about the cost of lies, and you know, eventually it's gonna catch up with you and it's gonna be dire consequences for the ones that are lying. And speaking of Harris, along with Skarsgård and Watson, I felt they all gave their best performances in this episode, especially the first two. There's a scene between Skarsgård and Harris's character where they're having conversation about their health because they're telling each other that, you know, pretty much they've been exposed to the radiation, and he shows him his tissue and he has blood on it, and he has a caterpillar that kind of crawls on his hand, and he looks at it and it's almost like he's accepting, you know, the beauty in life and how wonderful a thing it is and how precious it is. And this is a man that when you saw him in the first episode, he was very prideful, very strong. He didn't believe what was happening. He was listening to the government saying nothing is wrong, and he really developed this character throughout this series. And it is based on a true person, but to see that happen to a real person being portrayed in this type of show, it really is an eye-opener to see that someone can change, but to the extent of someone knowing that they're going to die, that's what made him open his eyes. And seeing that caterpillar kind of crawl on his hand, it was almost poetic in a way and very beautiful. Probably one of my favorite scenes in this episode alone. Now, this is just a side note here, but if there's anyone out there that doesn't like movies or TV shows that deal with a setting that has a lot of dialogue or information that is given, this episode does that pretty much for the full hour. This one is all information that's given, that's backtracking everything that happened to 12 hours before the incident actually occurred. I found that interesting because you get to see things you didn't notice before the first time, and you get to see the consequences of these characters presenting the information to the court and what will be happening afterwards. When they're in the courtroom, there's a lot of evidence that is given, including a model that's taken out of the factory. They're pointing out different things of what happened to the reactor. Jared Harris's character comes out and he's talking about the different elements of the reactor and what makes it function and what made it not function because of this incident. He uses a lot of scientific terms. Some of it I understood what he was saying, and to some people that may kind of lose interest for them, so I can understand that. But this is the type of episode where they needed to present all this stuff because it all really happened, and it's something that is beneficial to someone that has been invested in the show. Once this episode was over, though, I have to say this is one of the best shows or miniseries that I've ever seen in TV. HBO definitely knows how to make good shows, and I hope that they do more like this. This is, I think, one of the highest rated shows that's on TV right now, or at least on HBO. I think my favorite part overall was the very end. You almost get 10 full minutes of actual footage and photographs of the real life people, and they give you information on what happened to them. You know, you find out that the two main characters, Harris and Skarsgård, they died a few years after the incident. In the end, I think this series can also be a lesson to humans, telling us that a lie can only take you so far. And if it's going to come to the point of protecting your pride or protecting a country, is it worth the cost? Is it really worth the cost of so many other lives? And with something like Chernobyl, it, you know, definitely it's an eye-opener. to show that humanity, you know, it can test you to see what's important in your life. So, you know, I learned a lot. For me, especially in the world we live in, show us like, okay, what is taking priority over other things? Are you willing to protect somebody else or protect yourself? I already said this, but it's a great show. I hope we get more shows that deal with historic events. I hope it gets a few awards for Emmy season when the Emmy Awards start, but I think it's gonna definitely get a lot of recognition because it already is rating wise. But I love this show. Tell me what you guys thought of the series as a whole. Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe, give it a like. I hope you all have a good night. This is Ryan the Movie Guy saying I'll see you at the movies.